Hey everyone, and welcome back. It's Underrot 26, Enhancement Shaman. Weekly affixes were Fortified, Afflicted, and Raging. So we're going to start off with Wind Fury Totem, followed by Wind Rush Totem to get optimal positioning in order to Bloodlust and get our full Primordial Wave combo. This is an optimal place to Bloodlust every week, whether it be Fortified or Tyrannical, simply because it will line up with the second boss of this dungeon, known as Cragmaw the Infested. This is a boss you definitely want to have Bloodlust on, simply because it will be a huge time sink if you don't. And here we're all about optimization in Mythic Plus. So, things to note, these mobs in particular, we have the Maggot, which will do Rotten Bile. It needs to be interrupted, knocked up, pushed back, whatever. Just need to stop that cast or it will kill you. The thing to note as well with the Blood Priest, they have two casts. Gift of Gahoon, which can be purged, but try to kick it, and Dark Reconstitution, which just needs to be kicked as it is a heal. So this week it's Afflicted. So the best thing to have is Poison Cleanse Totem. It allows us to basically cheat this affix and cleanses both of them. If you have two of them or one of them, doesn't matter. No matter what, you drop the totem, it cleanses them. No one else has to do a thing. You can focus on DPS and mechanics. It's perfect. Another thing I would like to advise is simply use Cleanse Spirit with a mouse over macro. This will allow you to single dispel whenever there are only one of the affix and save your totem, preferably when you have two, or it's a very difficult spot to get to. If the boss is covering it or whatever, it may just be slightly out of range. So keep that in mind. Very, very good to have. So we focus down our casters. The Matriarchs is another thing you need to watch out for, as we have our Hunter kind of kiting out in the far to bait the Savage Cleave out there. If that gets baited into your group, please watch out, as it will one-shot you, especially on Fortified weeks. The Headhunters, they use Barbed Spear, which does a nasty bleed, and they can snare you. If you get snared, Spirit Walk. It's magic. So, okay. This pact in particular, I focus on the Befouled Spirit with a my interrupt for Harrowing Despair. That cast right there, we want to interrupt. I had to run up here because my Poison Cleanse Totem did not reach that Afflicted affix, so I went and single dispelled it. Lost a little DPS, but it is better for you to lose DPS than everyone get nerfed, essentially, with the haste debuff that comes from that affix going off. So as much as it sucks to lose DPS, sometimes you gotta make the sacrifice for the team. So always, as always, please make sure to use defensives whenever you're getting chunked in, especially Fortified week. A lot more times than not, the regular trash is going to be deadly. So, for instance, I had the mask focusing on me with its laser, whatever it's called, I forget. And yeah, so Dark Omen, I believe is what it's called, actually. So, got to be careful of that, as it will chunk you down. So I used Astral Shift there. So we're going to go ahead and start the boss. I set my focus kick macro to the boss, as my tank and I usually rotate. I can get every other, essentially, because Shaman kick is so short. So we have Primordial Wave available. However, we want to save it here for when the ad comes out, so we can get maximum haste value out of that, and get more haste equals more DPS. Go figure, right? So we go ahead and we toss it out there, get more damage, avoid the Creeping Rot. Very simple. It is a little difficult to see at times, so be aware of that. Communicate with your team that you're going to get the spell. Usually I spam the call out of I have totem, I have totem, I have totem, or two, something like that. Usually I say totem over and over and over. And I grab both the Afflicted if there's two. If there's just one, usually my Shadow Priest will dispel. So keep your interrupts going. So I dropped Poison Totem right there, sorry. And that took care of it. So always communicate. This boss is very simple. Keep interrupting your ad and boss to let no blood bolts go through. Avoid the Creeping Rot. And just DPS the boss. Very simple, very straightforward, but can be very devastating if you do not kick. So right there, I did not have Poison Cleanse Totem, so I just called out which one I was going to dispel, and my priest got the other one. Another thing to note, obviously, is to avoid Sanguine Feast, as that is a very small but deadly AoE that the boss does. So once we finish this boss, we're going to go on to the next area. Don't forget, you can mount in this dungeon, but you can't mount in Vortex Pinnacle. What's the deal with that, right? Anyway, so we just kind of thread the needle here and get past the blood ticks. Don't pull those. They're awful to deal with. So we're going to go ahead, and the thing to focus here is the Lasher cast needs to be interrupted, but we focus the Blood Swarmer. So we also... well, that's our main focus DPS is on the Blood Swarmer, simply because they will chew everyone down, especially on Fortified weeks. They are horrendous. So I dropped Stone Skin Totem to help with our Hunter as she's getting mauled, and we just tunnel as much DPS as possible. Interrupt Sonic Screech, as that is a silencing ability if it does go off, and beware of the Ground Rot. And they also keep Decaying Mind interrupted as well from the Lashers. This particular trash, not this one, but coming up, we will also have multiple maggots to deal with. Once again, interrupt their Rotten Bile and just nuke it down. Always keep your Sonic Screech Blood Swarmers kicked and just clear trash. We're basically clearing as much trash as we can, so that way we have time for less to come back up. Looks like we have 4 minutes left, so we are trying to make the most out of our time. If you get fixated, such as I was here, use a defensive or call that you prefer to have a defensive. Pokey, our paladin, actually put Blessing a Sack on me, so I didn't get absolutely eviscerated. So business as usual. Things to deal with that maggot. Now, usually I will use my knockup, Thunderstorm, or I will use Sundering. I don't often use Capacitor Totem or Stun Totem, whatever you would like to call it, simply because it does have a time before it goes off, and sometimes that's not the most optimal. But be careful, GCDs are tricky, and sometimes if you call that you've got something and GCDs, well, doing GCD stuff, it can be a very scary situation for your group. Once again, call out that I was getting the close one, my priest got the one in the back, and we continue. So I got fixated and made sure to astral shift, as I will be taking a rather large chunk of damage. If you can, if someone's being chased, especially if there's a double fixate, if someone's being chased and you don't want to get too far away, simply because if you get too far away, it's going to wind up charging you anyway and catching you. I often will drop Earthbind Totem just to give a slow on the bat itself. They're bats. I'm not sure what they really are. Disgusting creatures called Blood Swarmers. You don't want them on you. They probably have some sort of rabies. We don't know. I don't know. I'm not a veterinarian. So make sure you're not sitting in Wave of Decay, as on these weeks of Fortified, it will chunk you. And avoid the swirls, of course. And just keep on clearing trash. So, Cragmaw the Infested. Simple boss. Tank's going to tank him on one side. You're going to sit by that ribcage right there and bait the charges into the ribcage, as that is less movement for your entire team and maximum uptime in terms of DPS. Which is always what you want. So we dodge. Make sure you're stepping on these little worms that come out. Now, as we also, in this boss, we have multiple markers around the area we just cleared, and that is simply just for everyone to run around and clear maggots whenever the boss does the tantrum. So we did unfortunately miss a tick, but if anything, that adds more resources for us to build off of and do damage. You just don't want a lot of them because they can overwhelm your tank. So here we get our tanks Stampeding Roar out first, so that way we can get a good amount of move speed here. I'm going around. I usually have the blue side. I go and clear as many ticks as possible. We did miss one tick back there, unfortunately, or it looks like one or two. Nope, just one. So we clear all those. Utilize Ghost Wolf here. It's very, very, very important. So on the next go around for Tantrum, I will actually use Windrush Totem to give us the speed boost. It actually worked out that we had an extra tick, or we had a tick spawn in general, because I was able to cast Primordial Wave and get the 20% of haste instead of just the 10%. So there's Tantrum. I throw out Windrush Totem and start crushing worms. Good deal. And I use Totemic Rejection there with Storm Strike to actually pull Windrush Totem to me again to get the increased speed boost. It's very helpful little tech that you can use with Totemic Rejection. I also advise using your Poison Cleanse Totem specifically for Tantrum phase if you can, only because you're going to be running around trying to collect all these maggots, and you do not want to try and sit there and cleanse a affix. And there's Tantrum, just trying to clear worms. I don't have Totem, so I will have to clear one of them. So I clear that one, and we go to it. And we just finish the boss. Priest did grip me there in order to get the boss to charge the ribcage. If it does go out of position, it's fine. Just make sure you're killing all the ticks. That's Cragmaw the Infested. Pretty simple. So next pack we're coming up on, we combine the Death Speaker with the Horror. Now I'll set my kick macro to the Horror so that way we can just focus on DPS as per usual. The Wicked Frenzy may go off, and that's fine. If possible, you can have someone kick it, but Wicked Frenzy is not as terrible as the worm casts. So make sure you have a good interrupt order, and you can purge off the shield that the Bone Guardians get. However, you will run out of mana quick. We have a priest, so Mass Dispel is a lovely, lovely tool to utilize. Good thing to note too, if you're in between casts and you've just kicked, you can in fact stun the worm or stop it with Sundering. So coming up, we have these two Defilers. I focus purple. I'll get the first kick on purple, and then we have someone else follow up with that. So it was Withering Curse is the one I kick. I actually was unable to get it there, so I just took the Shadow Bolt Volley and then took back over for Withering Curse, or the next cast. Always good to communicate with your team and say, hey, I missed this, or keep an eye out and make sure that, hey, if they are going to miss it, use your kick. Sometimes it's better for multiple people to kick than no one kick at all. Because I do have decurse, but it can only decurse one person at a time every 6 seconds. Cleanse Spirit is literally only for the affix this week. So now moving on to Zancha. So Zancha is a relatively simple fight. Whenever you get upheaval, move it towards the mushrooms. Try and get a good spread and kill as many mushrooms as possible for whenever harvest comes, because harvest will do so much damage if you do not have all the mushrooms gone. Also avoid the dance. Sends out the spores, just move. I go ahead and I use my poison cleanse totem there, so I don't have to worry about the affix and can continue to have maximum uptime. So dance is coming up, festering harvest, what it's called, and dodge Orbeez. It was a very close call, thread the needle on that one. But don't panic when that comes out. The biggest thing to do is not panic whenever festering harvest comes out, because it does seem scary, but if you panic, chances are you're going to run more into the orbs than anything. So I try and get a good spread, as it will do a good amount of coverage. So dodge orbs, see, not panicking, just moving slowly, and doing DPS to the boss. You notice I hesitated before going in, sheerly because I did not want to risk my tank using shockwave from the boss and me getting cleaved. So there we go. Whenever we have a few more mushrooms up, we will have someone pop an immunity, such as Peach's Turtle, and we have her clear it. Or we will eat a few of the mushrooms and trip balls. Just kidding. We will be cleansed by our healer or priest. So just repeat the mechanic and do not panic. See, do nice, slow, methodical movements for that festering harvest. It's not a huge issue. It's only as much of an issue as you make it out to be. There's the dance. Stay in Ghost Wolf form for maximum damage reduction, and just dodge orbs. And next area, I go ahead and I dismiss my Earth Elemental. I used it for health, just to be safe in the Festering Harvest. So I'm focusing on the horror, and we are rotating kicks, as usual. And then we go into a Defiler, and from the Defiler we go into another horror group with Death Speakers. Defiler gets pulled. So we're just chipping away. Everyone's calling out our kicks. Our priest was very clutch there. Our tank had called for a fear, and they kind of ran in to get the fear off and were successful. It was very, very last second of that cast. Another thing, I'm sure you just saw it and saw it earlier, and I meant to mention this. Defilers have that Spirit Drain totem. Just don't be in it. Just watch out. Watch your feet. It's pretty bad. It will kill you. Moving on to the horror Death Speaker pack with the Guardians. Just blow them up. Light them up. I utilized Capacitor Totem just to help everyone make sure we all had our interrupts available, so just biding some time. And our Hunter even used their Silencing Arrow for that as well. So we start pulling the Faceless Corruptors. These guys are pretty simple, but can be very deadly at the same time. So they will do a frontal, maddening gaze. Just don't be in front of them. Now the tricky thing is these tentacles, Abyssal Reach is what it's called. They will absolutely one-shot you. So the best tactic I have, as you see I just implemented it, is stand in a place you don't care about and do damage to this worm, and then whenever its Abyssal Reach comes out, you just move to the side. So we're really just cleaving off this worm to kill the Corruptor as well, waiting for Abyssal Reach to come out, and then I'm going to step to the left. I backed up there because actually there was some, I believe my Paladin was very close, so I didn't want to, and it looks like they died to Abyssal Reach. So I think they just were in the wrong place at the time. Unfortunate, it happens though. And so this pack's coming up. So this pack we actually lust because it's just 2 Corruptors and a Horror. It's not a fun time, so we just go ahead and blow everything up. Unfortunately there, I did not flame shock into the group, and therefore when I lava lashed, I just marked it with the debuff and didn't actually spread any of my flame shocks. So I got 1 stack of my Primordial Wave, resulting in crappy damage. Could have had higher damage, and even though I was top overall damage at the end of the dungeon, it just feels bad. Best way to deal with this pack though is everyone have a kick order, try and stand on the same side or adjacent side as your tank since you're melee, and avoid the frontal. Try to avoid and bait Abyssal Reach, and just blow up these guys and get ready for the final boss. So for this boss in particular, save your totem for one of 2 reasons. A, the affix is under the boss and no one can mouse over dispel, or it's in the wall, there's 2 of them. Just be wary with your totem. You want to use it for optimal efficiency, not necessarily just throwing it out just because you can. So this boss is pretty simple. You get a dot debuff stacking. The Cleansing Light cleanses said debuff, and sometimes we even have our priest cleanse it off us because it is a magic effect and can be purged. But this is pretty much it. We will bait the Vile Expulsion to the left every time. Once they do it, we drag the boss and turn the boss right back where we were. This way you only have to use a little bit of the room and not the entirety of the room. So I saved Poison Cleanse Totem for this, as there was one under a bunch of spores in the gray goop and one off to the right, and rather anyone lose DPS, we maximized our uptime, I used it, and we were able to cleanse both affixes safely. And just like that, we keep baiting it back into the old pile of gray goop. So right there, we did do single dispels, but it wasn't in a terrible position. We were able to actually get both. I even opted right there to single dispel simply because the poison, it wasn't in a bad spot for poison cleanse totem to be needed. So this is the second ad. Actually, this is the last ad. So the last ad is the little red pustule guys on the ground. They look like little, I don't know, slimes, I guess. But coming up, we have the very last ad to kill. And because this boss almost feels like it absorbs everything. But you kill the little ads to basically do damage to the boss. But you have to hit a certain threshold in order to make those ads appear. So I wind rush us just to be safe. Not necessarily needed, but sometimes the gray goop tends to jump. So I drop totem here just to cleanse those, and we focus on killing this boss. And there's the last ad. We focus it down, and it's GG's. We've completed our Underrot 26. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I'm glad to hear it. You don't have to subscribe. I'm not here to do this for money or any sort of thing. I just enjoy doing high keys, and I figured I could contribute to the group of people that do high keys or are trying to aspire to do high keys. So feel free to not judge me on my bags, as I keep those for different sets, and Blizzard loves just throwing crests and filling my bags. So that being said, thank you for watching. Y'all have a wonderful evening or morning in Azeroth.